Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right in, shall we? Today, we're unpacking a massive, fundamental shift that's happening across modern education. We are moving away from that traditional rote memorization approach, the one a lot of us probably grew up with. And we're stepping into a completely different world of student-centered exploration. And while this shift might feel super modern, its roots are actually surprisingly old. So we're going to synthesize some really comprehensive lecture notes and background research today to demystify what inquiry-based learning actually is, how it works in practice, and why it's literally transforming the way we teach and learn. Here is our quick roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the shift to inquiry. Then look at the different forms of inquiry, move on to the actual classroom process, and finally, we'll tackle assessment and collaboration. I want you to imagine stepping into a modern classroom right now. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What do you expect to find on the walls? If it's a genuine inquiry-based environment, you are absolutely not going to see students sitting silently in neat rows, just passively absorbing a lecture. Instead, you're going to hear really energetic conversations. You'll see students actively gathering and analyzing information. And the walls? They'd be completely plastered with evolving questions, not just finished perfect answers. Okay, let's start with part one, the shift to inquiry. It's funny, we talk about this like it's a brand new trend, but the intellectual roots go way back. During the progressive era in the 1910s, John Dewey was already arguing that learning has to begin with the curiosity of the learner, that education fundamentally needs to be experiential. Fast forward to the 1960s, and you've got Joseph Schwab advocating for open-ended inquiries, specifically in science, basically repositioning the teacher as a curriculum designer. And then by the 1980s, Seymour Papert was bringing digital tools into this constructivist mindset, proving that technology is an incredible medium for self-directed problem solving. So we've actually been building toward this exact pedagogy for over a century. To really grasp the magnitude of this, we have to contrast the past with the present. Think about traditional direct instruction. It is highly teacher-led, it's all about explicit explanations, modeling, and practice. The teacher basically holds the knowledge and transmits it down to the students. Inquiry-based learning, on the flip side, places the student right in the center of the action. It demands that students actively construct their own meaning by investigating, testing ideas, and forming connections. The teacher isn't just delivering facts anymore. They're actively facilitating a journey of discovery. Moving right along to part two, the forms of inquiry. Now, inquiry is not just a single thing. According to the widely respected Bonci and Bell model, it's actually a gradual release of responsibility. It starts at step one with confirmation inquiry, where students are just verifying a principle that's already known. Then it moves up to structured inquiry. Here, the teacher provides the questions and the process, but the outcome isn't totally fixed. Step three is guided inquiry, which is highly utilized in rigorous programs like the International Baccalaureate. In this stage, the teacher presents the core question, but the students have to design the procedure and the solution. And finally, we reach open or free inquiry, where students are formulating their own questions entirely. It is a very carefully scaffolded climb. Because let's be honest, throwing students straight into open inquiry without those first three steps? Yeah, that's usually a recipe for absolute classroom chaos. And that brings us to a really massive misconception, confusing inquiry learning with pure discovery learning. Listen, if you take only one thing away from this explainer, let it be this. Inquiry is absolutely not a free-for-all. It requires intense behind-the-scenes coaching. Pure discovery learning is often spontaneous and hands-off, which honestly can lead to superficial learning or deep misunderstandings if the students don't have enough background knowledge. Inquiry learning, though, it provides structured guidance, scaffolding, and really clear goals. The teacher is in there actively coaching, prompting, and steering the students to ensure all that cognitive demand actually translates into real learning. Which brings us to part three, the inquiry classroom process. Take a look at this brilliant insight from Neil Stevenson. He says, inquiry honors the complex, interconnected nature of knowledge construction. What this really means for us is that true inquiry isn't just about having students make a pretty poster at the end of a unit. It's a profound mindset. It's an entire environment of curiosity, wondering, and collaborative thinking where the teacher and the student are genuinely co-constructing knowledge together. So how do educators actually facilitate that mindset? A lot of them use frameworks like Kath Murdoch's inquiry cycle. This guides students through a very specific path. It starts with tuning in to spark that initial interest and uncover preconceptions. Then they gather data and finding out, process it during sorting out, and then going further allows students to follow their own specific passions. All of this leads to making conclusions and ultimately taking action out in the real world. Now, the absolute most important thing to realize about this cycle is that it is fundamentally nonlinear. The messy reality of learning means students are going to be constantly jumping back and forth between these stages as exciting new questions pop up. The International Baccalaureate documentation actually presents a really fantastic paradigm for managing all this. They say we must intentionally move away from rigid, fixed time frames, prescribed stages, and the old idea that assessment is just one final test. Instead, we have to move towards an open-ended, iterative process of continuous asking, thinking, and doing. It's all about finding that perfect balance between planned learning experiences and the emergent avenues for exploration that naturally pop up when students genuinely get curious about something. All right, let's wrap things up with part 4, assessment and collaboration. So, the million-dollar question, how on earth do we actually grade this complex, messy learning? Researchers Adi Tomo and Kleem give us a really great lens for this. They break down inquiry instruction into 3 dimensions. First, cognitive activation. Basically, are the students actually being intellectually challenged? Second, student agency. Do they have control over setting their goals and choosing their methods? And third, guidance. Is the teacher providing the right degree of scaffolding and feedback? The crucial point here is that effective assessment isn't just checking facts anymore. It's evaluating how well these 3 elements are balanced. You have to measure the process, not just the final product. And that requires a massive cultural shift in our schools. We are moving away from traditional assessment, those summative final exams that just spit out a single letter grade, and moving towards inquiry assessment. This demands a culture of ongoing, varied, and highly descriptive feedback throughout the entire learning cycle. It heavily values reflection, self-assessment, and a student's ability to justify their thinking far, far more than their ability to simply select C on a multiple choice test. Now, if you're skeptical that complex inquiry can actually be rigidly and effectively assessed, just look at the IB Middle Years program. Whether it's formulating plans in history, investigating patterns in math, or designing experiments in science, the IB proves that rigorous criteria can be applied literally everywhere. Inquiry is completely woven right into the DNA of their assessment structure. It shows that every single subject can have a clear, definitive framework for evaluating deep exploration. But here's the thing. Absolutely none of this works in isolation. Collaboration is literally the secret engine running the whole shebang. A successful inquiry classroom requires students to work together, share their ideas, and problem solve as a cohesive team. And honestly, it is just as important that teachers step out of their own departmental silos. They have to plan transdisciplinary units and act as active collaborative partners with their students. Ultimately, this explainer leaves us with a pretty provocative challenge. We've seen the historical roots, the structured continuum, the dynamic classroom process, and the rigor required to assess it all. As education continues to evolve at lightning speed around us, the old production model is officially obsolete. So the real question we have to ask ourselves is, how will you use structure and intentional scaffolding to ignite a lifetime of curiosity and guide the next generation of critical thinkers? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating topic with me today.